Hello, friends. Welcome back to my video. Sorry for being gone for like 6 weeks. There's a reason, obviously, and we'll get into it. For the people that don't really want to just listen to a YouTuber defend himself on accusations and are just here for the memes, know that I'm back. I missed you, and I'm going back to my normal schedule later this week. So I'll see you then, and thanks. 6 weeks ago, I made a video talking about regrettable and hurtful stuff that I had done in my past. I talked about how I had inadvertently used my position of power to talk to girls that were fans of the band I was in when I was 16 to 20 years old. I made that video after thinking for a long time on how to even begin to address something like it. It feels impossible to talk about how you have grown as a person and hope that people believe it. So about a day after I posted the video, I was accused on Twitter of the things that I had talked about in the video. Obviously, I wasn't too surprised by that because I know making a video about a problem doesn't solve the problem. But I knew I had to make something. I knew I had to start somewhere with a conversation because of how I genuinely felt about it. But if you didn't see it, when I was 16 to 20 years old, I was in a band with really limited success. Nothing crazy, but enough to have fans. Growing up in that band and being a part of it since I was 14, I didn't really realize the position of power that I was in when talking to people. And through those ages, 16 to 20, I continued that behavior and was never challenged on it. Issues that had to do with this kind of thing didn't really get openly talked about or weren't as severe as they thankfully are now, which is not an excuse. I'm just saying you need the context. So I left that band when I was about 20. I kind of took a real hard step back after just living a life that I realized wasn't the one I wanted. And I really looked at how I treated people and how I overall conducted myself and my habits and decided I didn't like anything that I saw. So I wanted to change it. It's really easy to believe because a lot of people hammer this home on social media that when you're 18, 19, 20, you should have the world figured out, know right from wrong in this really white and black scenario. I'm super happy for people that figure that out at such a young age, but not everyone gets there that quickly. I think a lot of people know how rapidly your values and beliefs and just your overall not wanting to be a shitty personness changes the second you get into your early 20s. And it's rapidly changing all the time. Like even now at 26, I look back on the mindset and the things that I thought were right and wrong and problems in my life at 20 years old. And just my general way of thinking as a 20-year-old is something I don't even recognize. I don't know who that person is. That person doesn't exist, which I think is a pretty common thing, especially if you've been on a path where you've consciously been like, I want to be a good person. You look back on it and you're like, oh my God, what a dumpster fire. And even when you get older and you realize that the way you were was shitty, you can't change that. You still have to take accountability for it. And you have to understand why you were wrong and move forward knowing how to never make those mistakes again. That aside, just about a day after posting that video, a Twitter thread popped up posting a whole bunch of screenshots. Some of them were anonymous, some of them weren't, just basically outlining allegations that kind of fit with what I was talking about in my video. We'll go through some of the screenshots, but the majority of them are from 8 to 10 years ago. When I was 16 to 18, there's some where I'm 20 or maybe 19, it's hard to tell. The screenshots basically just consisted of me being super vulgar and sexting with people and just generally being a shitty person. Trying to figure out what to do after all of this was obviously really hard, and I didn't know how to properly defend myself. And that gets even harder when you genuinely don't want to minimize the pain that people feel that's real. You don't want to be like, shut up, you can't say shit about me, but you also have a right to defend yourself, which is what I decided to do. I'm going to go through some of the standouts in the thread, and I'm not going to debunk every single one of them because I think that's, again, just insensitive to the entirety of this conversation. And making a video talking about the things that I did in my past that sucked and saying everyone's a liar is stupid. But I also don't believe in cancel culture to varying degrees. I think the way that we go about these cancellations kind of furthers the divide on how we actually talk about and prevent problematic behavior. So what I'm going to do in this video is kind of highlight some accusations that are downright false, give context to some that are completely missing it, and also just give you my thoughts on the situation as a whole. And I just want to clarify, none of these are in any particular order. I'm just they're random. First one is from an anonymous person that says that when they were 13 to 14, they made a shirt design for me that I then went on to print onto shirts to sell. And they're saying that they're upset because they never got any money, never got a shirt, that I lied to them, and they feel wronged by that. So again, I don't know who this is. Their name's not in it, and I don't remember a situation like this. Obviously, being in as many bands as I was, we had a lot of shirts designed. This person saying that they designed something for me that I used would kind of date this to me being like between 15 and 17, because as I got older and the band kind of got more successful, we used the same consistent designer and like agencies. First of all, I just want to apologize to this person. I know that when you're young and you really like what someone's doing, you don't really think of the monetary implications on it. I'm assuming that if I went ahead and printed it and you made it for me, we would have had some kind of agreement on usage or whatever. But if you were young and you didn't realize it was going to be sold or whatever, which I can't imagine that I didn't mention to you, I understand if you're upset now as a grown person that's like, hey, I made this, I never got paid for my work. So again, I apologize to this person. Please get in contact with me in whatever way you want. You can email me, message me somewhere. Let's figure out what you're talking about, and I'd love to make it right for you. This particular screenshot talks about how around a decade ago, I think actually 10 years, I did live streams on this website called Stickam, and I would frequently have my little sister on. She'd come on and talk to the people because she liked it. She was like 7 or 8, you know. At the same time, she was also struggling with really bad health problems, and it scared the fuck out of me and my family and her, and just overall was an awful thing to deal with. Her coming on the stream and talking about it to people and them wishing her well, like, really made her feel better. And me as a 16-year-old kid who is destroyed by the thought of my sister having serious medical problems would talk about it all the time on my live streams. It was a way of coping, you know, just like if you were talking to a friend about all your problems, but for me, my friend was talking to my camera. So I don't know what you're trying to imply by adding this accusation to this thread. It seems like you're trying to maliciously twist this into implicating something about me and my younger sister, but don't do that. That's dumb. I'll actually read this one so you get all of it. I went to Late Night Reading's Boise shows in February and May of 2013 with a friend who was the same age. We were both 14 to 15 years old, and our parents had dropped us off and fully left. So we had no adults there with us at the show. We were both obsessed with the band and hadn't really heard of the others on either tour. The most notable interaction, I think, was at the first show when Brady followed us around for most of the time that he wasn't on stage. My friend and I were really close, and he kept asking us if we were gay, if we were together, and if he could watch us make out because it would be so hot. It definitely made me feel uncomfortable, and I didn't know how to respond, but I didn't really analyze the situation until years later. I saw some posts in this thread that were similar to this one, and I wanted to highlight this one in particular for a very specific reason, because I feel like it's a prime example of the past not really aging well, but that not necessarily meaning that anything ill-intended had happened. Cancel culture likes to take really context-heavy situations and examine them with modern standards, where hindsight kind of automatically makes you look like a guilty party. Of course, looking back at a scenario like this, told in this context, it's very easy to write off as obviously wrong. But the issue with retellings like this is what they're not saying. They're not saying that the venue of this show was extremely small and didn't have a green room, meaning all the bands on the show were out in the audience with the crowd the entire time. Because of how small the room was, it was basically impossible to be more than 10 feet from someone. And if you wanted to make the assumption that I was following you, you could decide that, because I was probably in everyone's peripheral vision at all times that whole night. Now, I deny that I would ever say anything to anyone with any sort of malintent in mind. But what is unfortunately true is that I would have been around 18 at this time, which means I was really stupid and extremely edgy in my humor. My favorite bands were Blink-182 and All Time Low, who were really popular for the vulgarity of the way that they spoke to people and their fans.
You will be sexually rewarded after the show. The better you do, the better the sex. Just here, just come sit next to me right here. I can almost last for a whole minute now.
Yeah, and then your dad fucked them all and sucked all their dicks until they came. Fucker.
You suck dick and eat butt. Butt eating duck, suck fucker. Here's a song.
My band literally modeled our entire personality off of those bands. So it's absolutely possible that in attempting to emulate the humor of those bands that I looked up to so much, I might have made a comment similar to what this person is describing, but only ever with humor in mind. Now, I apologize if this made you uncomfortable. If it made you uncomfortable in the moment, or even if just as time went on and you thought about it. Remembering that I used to be this cringy also makes me very uncomfortable. But the fact remains that I would have never followed someone around at a show. And if I did make a comment like this to you, I'm really sorry. But situations like this are the reason that context really matters, especially when you're making accusations. Because saying that I made a bad joke at a packed pop punk show when I was 18 years old is not at all the same thing as saying I followed two 14-year-olds around at a show and asked them to make out. So I'll read this one too. Hey, I have an experience with Brady S. I don't know how he found my Instagram, but when I was 17, there was some mild flirting type stuff. He never actively tried anything on me though. He left a heart on one of my selfies, and I'm pretty sure my age was in my bio. Don't quote me on that though. You can add me to the thread if you'd like, or think it would be helpful. I just prefer my name be left out. So I know exactly what this is. Back then when I was in those bands, me and my bandmates would use Instagram and Twitter bots to try and gain exposure. The app we used was called Instagress, and basically how it worked is it would find people that were following the band members of bigger bands that maybe this person would also like your music. And it would automatically like those people's pictures. It would comment little random things. It would follow them. And it was all in an attempt to try and get that person to go, oh, who's this? All right. Oh, they're in a band. That's cool. Check out the band. Listen to the music. So the bot did have like an age filter on it, and we'd always set it at 18 and older. After a while, I noticed that it was still liking and commenting on things that it shouldn't have. And I didn't know if it just was broken or if people had put their wrong age on their Facebook account that was associated with their Instagram account. And after one incident that I remember very clearly in my mind, where the bot had commented the sunglasses emoji on someone's post that was like, rest in peace, their brother. I was like, all right, we gotta stop this. But we used that bot for a good couple years. So again, I just want to say I'm really sorry if that made you uncomfortable. I absolutely did not have any intention of being like, ooh, she's 17. Don't use social media bots. They are not worth it. This wasn't an accusation or anything that was in the thread. I just kind of wanted to highlight it because I got a lot of DMs and comments like this that go back to my point on how I think the way cancel culture works sometimes is just so counterproductive. So this person just DM'd me and said, manipulative little fuck. Lol, go jerk off or tiny dick or fuck, which I liked. Thank you for sexually harassing me, and I guess it's okay because you did it instead of me. So now I want to highlight a couple screenshots in bulk because I feel like they all kind of fall under the same scenario. Before I get into it, I just want to highlight my birthday, which is May 28th, 1994. This was a screenshot that was posted of a Facebook conversation, and it's interesting for a couple reasons. One is that a lot of people gravitated towards it because only my side of the conversation is visible. The person had blacked out all of their part of the exchange. Two is that the person behind this thread posted this screenshot without ever mentioning my age, which made people believe that it was current, when in actuality I was 17 and underage. And like I said, there's a couple other conversations that fall into this category where dates are not mentioned or highlighted, ages are kind of skewed to make me appear guiltier, or dates are just cut out of the conversation to make them appear current. So I'm not going to read this screenshot because it's just sexting, and I'm sure that YouTube is already suppressing the hell out of this video. So go ahead and take some time to read it. So I have this conversation where both sides are visible. It's in my Facebook inbox. Going by the date in this, I am freshly 17 and this person is 14. I realize that that can sound kind of jarring to people nowadays, but it would have been almost 10 years ago and it was very common at the time. This would have made me a junior in high school and them a freshman in high school. And at least from personal experience, that kind of pairing was not uncommon at all in high school. It was very common to know freshmen that were dating up, seniors that were dating down. This wasn't seen as weird because it was still in the average age bracket of your peer group. And that peer group were the people you were interested in. Having friends that were 2 to 3 years younger than you wasn't a weird thing if they were in your age bracket because you'd see them all the time. This is kind of the approach that everyone I knew had around dating. So I didn't see anything wrong with dating someone who was a freshman when I was freshly 17 because all of my peers were dating people in that age bracket. I'm going to put these side by side so you can read them. And if you need to pause the video, absolutely go for it. Now, I want to give some context. This was not a person that I didn't know. This was a person that I routinely talked to on a website called TinyChat. And the reason the conversation starts so abruptly is that we were moving our conversation from that website to Facebook. So I didn't message them out of nowhere. They had wanted me to message them and continue the conversation on Facebook. So none of this was unwarranted or unwelcomed. And while I agree that these messages are very vulgar, it's not like that person didn't reciprocate that when speaking to me. So to say a decade later that they didn't like me sending those messages to them doesn't really line up with the reality of the conversation and just further emphasizes my point on them blacking out their own responses to twist the narrative. 2011 was almost a decade ago, and I was really young and really stupid. I had almost no social skills when it came to talking to girls, and because of being in a band, when girls would hit me up, it was very vulgar and sex-oriented and asking to hook up. Because I was already awkward as hell at heart, when I became interested in people, I mirrored the way other people were talking to me. I thought this was the best way to express my interest in people. And looking back now, it's very obvious just two dumb idiots trying to flirt with each other. It's cringy and clumsy and sucks to look at, but that's what being a teenager is. You magnify that with the fact that my growing pains were under a spotlight and they weren't allowed to be private, embarrassing mistakes. Add that up and you get the cringiest shit ever. I realize that the modern standards for high school dating have completely changed in the 10 years since this happened, and I'm all on board with it. That's literally the definition of progress. But I can't help and actively change what was okay a decade ago. And that's another problem with cancel culture, where you only examine things from that modern standpoint. If I was 26 and talking to a 14-year-old like this, that's bad. But I was 17, and the post on Twitter failed to mention that. It was completely misleading. So if you wanted to expose two awkward, horny teenagers trying to figure their shit out, you did that. So there obviously is some real stuff mixed in here, but there's also a lot of posts that just look like something I would never say. And I bring that up because I had, at this time, a ton of people that would impersonate me on Facebook, later Snapchat, and even after that, Tinder. It got really bad at one point. There were over like 20 plus accounts of me on Facebook. I obviously don't have that screenshot of those accounts because it was 10 years ago, but there's still a good amount of them left. I guess people just forgot to delete, and after this thread came out, people deleted even more of them. I'd get messages all the time of people getting catfished using my pictures on Snapchat and thinking that they had talked to me. There was an incident with a band that I was on tour with in 2014 where one of the tour members had been found out by everyone else that he had made fake Snapchat accounts of all of us to message girls, most of them underage. Hell, there was one time that a girl came up to me at a show, fully believed that we had been in a relationship for over 7 months. She flew from London to come to the show, and she came right up to me, threw her arms around me, was like, "Oh my God, finally, I love you. Can't believe we're finally together." And I was like, I don't know who you are. And she had literally gotten catfished for over half a year and thought we were dating. This screenshot just had the caption of grooming on Twitter. It says, "Hey, so I just looked back at some old DMs because I do remember that happening to people, but not specifically me. He wasn't super creepy towards me other than like sending me hearts and calling me pet names like Lovely sometimes or whatever. But when I was younger, he would send me some of his MLIC YouTube videos before they were posted and ask for my opinion and be like really nice to me when I would fawn over them." So I'm gonna stop that there. MLIC was a YouTube series I made from just turning 15 to 18 years old. I kind of stopped posting consistently because of the band towards the end of being 17 and into 18. So if I was asking for feedback on videos I was actively making, then that would have absolutely made me 15 to 16 in this scenario. And you gotta remember, at this time, there were not hundreds of thousands of people watching my content. There was more like hundreds, less than that maybe. And all the people that liked what I was making were kind of like internet friends because I was 15. All of us would communicate all the time. I'd send videos for feedback and be like, "Is this good? Is this bad? What do you think?" I'd openly discuss issues that we had with our band and be like, "Dude, it fucking sucks. I'm 15. They're mean to me." And I would genuinely listen to people vent about life. We all talked. DMing someone nowadays has like a much more serious connotation, but big discussion groups or like chat rooms existed, but there wasn't like like a centralized one, like something like a Discord where you could have a whole group of people and post things to get that feedback. Everyone would DM each other privately. So to get that feedback, I would DM people videos and ask for their opinions, especially the ones that I thought would give me honest feedback on whether it was good or not. And it was also just fun being 15 and making something that people really liked. Didn't have that many friends in real life, so I lived on the internet. But I don't really agree with calling this grooming. I really apologize to this person if looking back it made them feel uncomfortable, or even if they felt uncomfortable at the time. But again, I wouldn't be DMing people that I could tell didn't want to talk to me, especially if we were friends. I know it's not always easy when you're younger to be like, hey, could you message me your videos less? And again, I'm sorry if you felt like you couldn't say that, but in no way would I call this, me being 15 years old, grooming someone. I understand people being upset, but I feel like so many didn't actually look at the dates and do the math on how old I was during these screenshots. Like, I feel like they just assumed that this was something that happened like right now when I was 26, which just wasn't the case and hasn't ever been the case. This one was really interesting to me because I know the person that sent this DM. So it says, hey, my friend told me this was about Brady. If it is, my girlfriend was on tour with him in 2018 and he jacked off in front of her while they were in the van together. She was 20, so she wasn't underage, but like, who the fuck does that? I literally hate him so much. I also just had another girl in my DMs who asked me about him because she found my tweets about how he was a shit person. I don't know if you know her, but y'all should link. I'm so here for the shakedown. First, I'm gonna say I did not jerk off in the van in front of your girlfriend. We'll get to that, but I didn't do that. This person is the girlfriend of a photographer for a band that I was tour managing about 2 years ago. This person, the girlfriend, really doesn't like me because when we met, we kind of had a bad first encounter. And since that encounter, she has constantly talked shit on me on Twitter and just been generally nasty. So that first interaction was in Cleveland at the Agora Ballroom. The photographer, who I guess they weren't dating at the time, invited her to the show as guests of the band. And she was just extremely rude and obnoxious and grating, just annoying as fuck. The band that I was tour managing for were kind of like pulling me aside, being like, hey, can you get her out of the green room? Whatever. Like, we know her. She kind of sucks on Twitter, like that kind of thing. And I was like, okay, if I have to do that, I will. But they ended up leaving the green room to go watch the show. Later on that night, I made a comment to the band I was tour managing about how hard it was to be around her and that I agreed with their assessment. I guess the photographer heard that and relayed my thoughts to this person who didn't take it very well, just so we established that. But yeah, I did not jack off in the van. This is kind of funny because I understand what happened here or what she's trying to do. So while we were on tour, one night I was driving and everyone else in the band and the photographer were awake in the van. We were all delirious and sleep deprived, and I told them a story. It was a story that was told to me from the bassist of another band that I had been on tour with. Basically, he explained that one night in the same scenario where it was late as hell, he was driving and his entire band was asleep around him, he ended up jerking off to stay awake. Obviously, this is really gross, but it's also a funny story worth retelling. I had told the story to everyone in the van, they laughed, we were all slap happy, and it led to discussion of this event, which allowed for everyone to stay awake and keep me awake while driving, which was the whole point of telling it. So at no point did I jerk off in a moving vehicle. I could maybe like chalk this up to a misinterpreted story secondhand from someone if I didn't have the added context of this person hating me for thinking they're annoying. But considering how much she goes off on me on Twitter, I would just say that this is her being annoying for the sake of being annoying. So this one says, hey, I haven't heard about Brady in a long time. I never said anything because his band was not big, so I figured it didn't matter. That's not good. But him and his merch dude flirted with me hard and made me really uncomfy. He sold me a hoodie at 80% off by saying, I'll give it to you for a discount, just for you, winky face. And it was weird, and I felt compelled to buy the hoodie. I ended up buying it because I didn't know what else to do to get out of that situation. But my dad came to my concerts with me usually, and he wouldn't let me hang out with them after the show, and I was mad at the time, but I'm grateful. You can just add this to the pile of creepy evidence. So I obviously don't know when this was, because there's no date, but if I was at the merch table actively selling and offering discounts, I would guess that I was probably like 17 to 19 years old at this time. We would have sold a hoodie for a fucking $5 footlong that someone didn't want at this point. If it meant we could keep going on the road, we did not care about making money or a profit or selling things at full price, just as long as we got enough to buy enough gas to get to the next city and maybe get some McDonald's. I can't control how you interpret, I'll give you a discount. But to imply that I was suggesting something sexual with those emojis just seems like an unfortunate misunderstanding, because every piece of merch sold on any of those tours were probably at a discount. Every piece sold the night of the show that you went to was probably sold at a discount. So I apologize that receiving that discount made you feel uncomfortable. I promise you that there was no intent that you thought there was, but I hope you enjoy your hoodie, if you still have it. I really wanted to highlight this particular screenshot because people were using it as proof to say that I was sexting 12-year-olds when I was like 17 to 20, which never ever happened. I don't know if it was the person that submitted these screenshots or if it was the person posting it on Twitter, but a lot of it got cut off and posted out of order. So this is me texting someone and basically being like, hey, I find you attractive. It looks like it was 7 years ago, so I would have just turned 19. And above in the conversation, I had asked, how old are you? And they had responded with, I'm 12. I could tell that this was a joke because they definitely weren't. And then they went on to say that they were 16, lol. And then I go on to make a really bad joke by saying, oh, okay, you're really attractive. If you were 12, I should kill myself. Again, this is a really unfortunate attempt of like edgelord humor, but it literally shows that I wouldn't have continued the conversation if this person was 12. I then make another joke that's not great, but it had intent behind it, saying, in 2 years, we can hold hands, which would make them 18, implying that I didn't want to continue the conversation if they were under 18. The person then assures me that it's okay because the age of consent in the state they're in is 16. And I kind of respond in a way that's polite, not being like, oh, fuck off, implying that I'm like, okay, hit me up when you're 18 because I don't have any interest in continuing the conversation. So yeah, for the people that are using this as proof that I was texting 12-year-olds, it's not proof of that at all. Same thing with this conversation. I think this was the oldest that I was, which was 20 years old. And it's a Twitter DM with a girl where it looks like I had asked her how old she was. She then said that she was 78, which I made a joke to. She then said, JK, I'm 11, which I responded to appropriately. And then she sent me an emoji letting me know that she was kidding. Then I made an unfortunate emoji choice. Then she made another joke by posting a church. And then I made a wonderful emoji choice with this. If I was asking how old someone was, it means it wasn't visible in their profile. It wasn't known to me in any other way. And the only way I could know was by asking. You can imply what you want from it, but I don't know how sliding into DMs work nowadays because I've been in a long-term relationship for a while. But I know that when I was 20, it wasn't really acceptable to just DM someone and be like, I would like to verify your age as I am attracted to you. You kind of got to work that in, and then when you find out, stop talking to them. This is one I just wanted to highlight because I know this person and I know what they're talking about, and I'd kind of like to give my perspective on it. So basically, I met Brady in fall 2018, and he had been dating Susie for about half a year, I think. He was overly nice and flirty at the merch table and invited my friend and I to more shows. Of course, we were so excited, and my friend instantly developed a crush on him. Throughout the week, he was super flirty, even though we knew he had a GF. Nothing ever happened between him, her, or I. However, I know that he slept with multiple girls on that tour, and after reading the thread, some of those instances seemed like they fit the October-November timeframe. When I last saw Brady late July last year, he was telling me how I was a completely different person from when he met me and how he feels responsible for helping me glow up. I'm gonna stop you right there. This is a girl I know very well. She was a fan of the headlining band or the tour that the band I was tour managing was on. I know it's a lot. At this time, she was in her early 20s. Her and her friends were following the tour because they were fans of the headliner, and they hung around my merch table almost every show. I was also selling merch on this tour. So I'll explain it Again, if someone is selling you something, they are going to be overly nice. If someone is the opposite gender and they're selling something to you, they are still going to be overly nice. This isn't flirting. That's you making assumptions. I don't know if you've ever worked a retail job, but it's literally customer service 101. The band I was tour managing was super small. They were like a baby band. So after seeing these girls multiple nights and them commenting how impressed they were by the band, I advised the band members to introduce themselves. This is how you make fans as an opening band. And these guys weren't the best at that. I was like, just go say hi. So after these girls met the band, the girl in question mentioned to me how cute she thought the guitarist was. The guitarist also mentioned to me that he was interested in her. That'll be important for later. I got to know these girls fairly well after like 4 to 5 nights of them hovering around my merch table and talking to me and telling me about themselves and me telling them about me. They were massive fans of the headlining band and they constantly talked about how much that band meant to them. So I ended up asking them, like, are you paying full price every night to get into these shows? And they were like, yeah. So knowing that this girl and the guitarist of the band I was managing were interested in each other, and also genuinely believing that this group of girls were good people and just kind, I offered to let them use our guest list spots to get in without paying on the nights that we weren't using our guest list spots. My band agreed to this and they came to a ton of more shows on the tour. So the guitarist and this girl are now dating, and they have been for a while. Last year they actually stayed at my house in LA while they were there visiting, and we were friends. I would hang out with them every night when I got home from doing whatever I was doing. And I remember the night that this chick is talking about, we were drinking and going over old memories and just having a good time. And I said to her, I was like, I think it's so dope how supportive you are of the guitarist's career and how well she had blended their lives together and how supportive she just was in general. She had mentioned to me that it was like her dream to date a musician. She would thank me all the time for setting them up, even before this trip to LA. Guessing that's what she means by the glow up part of her message. You're still welcome for my kindness, by the way. Long story short, the couple and I had a falling out because they wanted to come again to stay and I couldn't accommodate them that night. And they got really upset in like kind of a selfish way that I wouldn't let them stay, then just stopped talking to me. This one isn't that relevant. It just really, right there, because it fucking sucks, man. If you're casually throwing in there that I cheated on my girlfriend a bunch, that's a super serious accusation. I have the best girlfriend ever and would never do anything to jeopardize our relationship. So saying that you read claims in a thread where they're dated at like 2012 doesn't line up with a tour in 2018. So if you're gonna make that claim, you gotta provide some evidence. This post is me talking to someone on Facebook and me asking them to send nudes or email them. I know who this person is, and I have this conversation in my Facebook inbox. So in this screenshot, I'm 18, and this person's somewhere around 16 and a half. It's been a while, and I don't really remember her birthday, but I remember us having about a 1.5 years difference in age. I had known this girl since I was 14 or 15, and we were friends online for a long time. Now, I've already addressed this age difference. It's one of the main reasons I made my first video, talking about how when I had turned 18, I was still talking to girls that were a year or two younger than me. And I've already addressed that in this video, where I talk about how I didn't see that as wrong, because this person would have still been in the age range of my high school peer group. Additionally, we had known each other for so long and we flirted for so long that I didn't really understand the issue with continuing to talk to them after I'd turned 18. You have to remember there's not a millennium between the ages of 17 and 18. It's just 12 months. This isn't an excuse, it's just context that's worth mentioning. So is it regrettable to talk to someone like this and be vulgar and kind of disrespectful and just obscene for no reason? Yeah, it absolutely is. But the important piece of missing context is that this is in no way a non-consensual conversation. We had known each other for years at the point in this conversation. The thing I want to hit on with this is that this is almost a decade ago. And back then, the emphasis that is now fortunately placed on overage and underage interactions, even limited ones like this, didn't exist. And it wasn't something that people cared about. I know that's not an excuse, but that's just how the times were. But if you look at it, it's basically the equivalent of a senior in high school talking to a sophomore in high school. And that doesn't make it right when you're talking about misusing power dynamics. And like, there definitely was some of that there because we were friends and she was still a fan of the band. But again, we were friends. I obviously regret talking to her, anyone like this, but those are growing pains that you learn as you get older and the culture changes, and you absolutely should be embarrassed by them, but that's all they are. The big thing that I took away from this when I sat down a couple years later to figure out who I wanted to be was how bad I felt about those power dynamics. Anyway, Anyway, a couple of years ago, me and this girl got back in contact and I ended up apologizing to her. I was like, dude, I was a fucking idiot when I was a kid. And she was like, I totally get it. You know, we all do stupid things. And I thought we had patched things up because I genuinely felt bad. I guess if she wanted this included in the thread, she doesn't feel that way anymore. But I still really am sorry if you're watching this. There's obviously more conversations in that thread. There were a ton that I'm like, that doesn't sound like anything I would ever do. I would never touch people. I would never fucking do something that actually made a person uncomfortable or went over any kind of physical line that people would be like, what the fuck are you doing? I have never been that person. There's a bunch of posts that I'm like, what is this? It's so vague. It's talking about things that I know I would never do. There's just enough information that it could be real, but also enough to just imply the worst things possible. So after seeing all those posts, I was like, I need to do some due diligence on how much the person that was posting all these screenshots was actually checking to see if there was evidence or if things were real or substantiated. So I fucking made a brand new Twitter account and messaged the person. This account had no followers. It was created that day. I just kind of made up a story for this account where I said that this person had gone to school with me and that her big incident was that we rode the bus together and I stole a bunch of money from her friend and ran away screaming, fuck off. It took like 5 minutes. None of it was true, but it was just enough vague information. And I sent it to her. And within 20 minutes, she responded. She didn't ask who I was, didn't ask for any proof that we went to school together. She just immediately agreed to post it to the thread. I hearted the God, he's always been trash because I agreed with that. Now, another important factor about the person making this thread is that I know who they are. I've known them for years and years. They started out as a fan of my first band a decade ago and grew into a person that I genuinely believe to be my friend. So we stopped talking a while ago, but a couple years ago, she started sending me these Snapchats out of the blue, taking issue with these scenarios from the past. Out of nowhere, she just started messaging me being like, I'm gonna expose you, fuck you, I'm gonna ruin your life, and just being horribly vindictive. I didn't remember anything happening between us that would make her hate me, but after this thread came out, I ended up going back into our old conversations to try and figure out what had happened. I could only find our Facebook exchanges, which was really hard because she had deleted the Facebook account, but there's plenty of proof to show that it's her talking. Looking back on these messages, I find it really strange for someone with a past like hers to hold the opinion that people are incapable of change and will always be a reflection of their worst selves. These messages are dated at around the time she would have been 16 to 17, which is the same age that she's accusing me that I should have known better. These are the only messages I personally have regarding the subject. We kind of bounced around frequently over the years over different social medias, which a lot of that communication has been lost to time. But anyone who knew her would tell you that this behavior continued for many years after. This was a person that was frequently homophobic, used a lot of racial slurs at me and others, and bullied many people that were associated with our social group. Super common for her to just tell them to kill themselves and just generally harass them. She even went as far as sending me and other people unsolicited nudes of other underage band members because she thought it was funny. She even sent underage girls' nudes to other people just to laugh at them as a form of bullying. She's also completely rewritten her own actions after the fact, deciding out of nowhere that I am at fault for every bad thing she's ever done. Anytime anyone ever asserts she was harmful or problematic to them in her past, she deflects and minimizes her own actions and claims that I made her act that way, which I absolutely don't understand and genuinely feel that it's just an added layer to what she's trying to do by somehow making even the bad things she's done my fault, which is delusional. Now, the reason I bring this up is because I think it's important to know where you get your information from. I know that people like to believe that with this subject matter, people wouldn't lie or be manipulative or have an agenda when making accusations, but unfortunately, that's not always the case, which is why I think it's important to know the source of your information to make sure that there isn't a bias for misinformation, which in this case, I think there is. I'm not saying that I have any way of knowing whether or not she has changed since I knew her. In fact, I genuinely believe believe that she probably has. I don't believe she holds the same ignorant opinions or toxicity as she did when she was younger, but that's because I know I am not the same person I was when I was younger, and I believe that of most other people. What I do find interesting, though, is that if she believes that she's allowed to outgrow her problematic behavior, then why doesn't she believe that I could have? If she doesn't believe that she's still as shitty as she used to be, then why am I not allowed to be better too? To me, this seems like a person that has a vendetta. We've already established that she doesn't care to fact check any possible accusation against me and wants to accept anything as true to fit her narrative. Here's a screenshot from 2 days ago where she had messaged one of my best friends in real life asking for any kind of dirt that they could provide her with, and then realizing that she messaged the wrong fucking person. None of this sits well with me or feels like it's coming from an authentic place. Sammy, I hope that you are not the same person you were a decade ago, because I know I'm not. That's it for screenshots that I'm gonna go over in this, but I did want to address a few other things. A lot of people were throwing out that I was raping these people, and I just want to make it really clear that I never had any actual physical contact with any of the people that are in this thread or anyone underage when I was overage. None of these accusations even say that I was having physical contact with them. It's all just sexting, and that's all it ever was. I don't know where people got that idea. I guess I could see them connecting the dots, being like, oh, if they're sexting, then they probably hooked up, but I never did that. I also saw a lot of comments saying that I was sexting and raping 11-year-olds as a 26-year-old man. I didn't see anything in the thread where someone accused me of that, but if anyone has any information on who started that, please let me know, because I would love to sue the fuck out of them. I think as an overall note that I have with cancel culture, whatever your personal opinions on it, this is one I always gravitate to, because I feel that cancel culture is inherently biased in nature and therefore can never be a valid form of justice for anyone, because anything that's biased in nature will always be unfair to one party. And you see these kind of biases in the way that people naturally defend and crucify people for the exact same actions. So in many of these defenses online, I saw many people claiming that they couldn't have known what they were doing when speaking to me when I was 18 or 19 and they were 17, because they were 17 and didn't realize the implications of their actions. But no one holds that same standard when reviewing the conversations I had with younger people when I was 17. So you're telling me at 17 that I should have known who to speak to, who not to speak to. I should have understood the consequences of my actions. But other 17-year-olds that I spoke to should not be expected to know those same things. I feel like that standard can't exist because you're no longer looking at things objectively to see if real harm was done. You were just deciding that one person is guiltier than the other, no matter what the context. And that to me will always backfire in the face of real justice. Not because I am the person on the chopping block today, but because when you leave justice up to bias, you lose objective truth. And it just becomes what people feel on any given day, which I believe to be dangerous. When truth is malleable to whatever context best suits a person, you will never be able to decide who's truly guilty, which I don't think is right. A bunch of people were mad at me for monetizing my first video that I made, which I totally understand. They were like, yo, this is bad that he's profiting off of subject matter like this. A lot of people didn't seem to read the description of the video, which has been there since it was posted, but I'll read it for you now. I value all of you. Thank you for your time. Also, I didn't want to run ads on this video, but I don't know whether or not YouTube suppresses videos if they're not monetized. And I wanted to make sure everyone saw it. I'll figure out a nice thing to do with the AdSense money. So as of today, this video made $65.73. Since that's such a small amount of money, I haven't donated it yet. So my plan is to take the monetization from this video, combine it with the money made on the other video, and then add in money from my own pocket to actually make a donation that's worth anything. So in 2 weeks, I'll come back to this video and see how much it made and combine it with all those other numbers. And once that donation is finalized, I'll post the receipt to my YouTube community and to my Discord and all that. Someone suggested donating it to RAINN, which is a relevant charity to the subject matter, and I think that's a great idea. I'll also be making another donation to Black Lives Matter, but if you have any other good charity suggestions, I'd love to hear them in the comments. I want to take a second to address the racial slurs that I'm seen using in some of these screenshots. I'm not going to bother with excuses of how I was young or ignorant because, frankly, I don't think that matters. It doesn't negate the harm that I caused by using that word and should not be minimized due to context. As a person that's dated a person of color for the past 3 years, I can't help but look at my own previous ignorance with nothing but disgust and regret because I would have been the person that made my significant other's upbringing so hard. Like with this entire video, I cannot deny that I was very ignorant and selfish in many facets of my life when I was younger. And seeing myself use those racial slurs is something I can't forgive, not even for myself. And so I completely understand those who may not want to forgive me. Seeing as I have no excuse, all I can offer is my sincerest apologies and my deepest regrets. I went to multiple BLM protests in Indianapolis over the summer, which I'm happy to say impacted me in a way that I've never experienced before in my life. In those protests, I could feel the weight of my own previous ignorance crushing me like a boulder, and the guilt of ever being a person that was complicit in the suffering of an entire group of people. Paired with the teachings from my relationship, who for over 3 years has educated me on an extremely deep level on my own privilege as a white male, truly opened my eyes to the disgrace of my actions and made me never want to be complicit like that ever again. I cannot apologize enough to those affected by my actions and sincerely understand those who can't accept that apology. All I can do now is try to be a good ally and hope that eventually in time the good will outdo the bad. Look, I am deeply ashamed of my behavior from when I was a kid to when I had turned over age. It is a regret that I face every day of my life, and it guides me in every decision I make as an adult now and how I treat people. It fucking sucks that you can't change the past, and it fucking sucks to be 26 years old and want to reach back through time and slap the shit out of 17, 18-year-old me and not be able to. It fucking sucks to understand so clearly how the mistakes of my past have affected people genuinely and have no real way to make it up to them. I don't have answers on how to fix those things. People like to mention, oh, well, he says he's dealing with the consequences, or that accepting the consequences is just a blanket statement to kind of cover things up or not take responsibility. And the reality is that I absolutely have consequences to face and accept them for those mistakes. The consequence is having to deal with people being angry at you and not having a right to be upset that they're angry at you. The consequence is having a reputation that will follow you forever. The consequence is being called terrible things all the time and feeling like you can't fight it because you understand why people are upset. Those consequences are real, and I feel them a lot. I can't do anything retroactively to go back and change what happened. All I can do is be a better person every day, which is something that I have taken so seriously for years now. I said this in my last video, but to the people that genuinely feel wronged by me and are hurt by what I said or did to them in the past, I am sorry. And I will never, ever be able to make it up to you in a meaningful way. But I am sorry. To everyone else, I hope you can forgive me, but I understand if you can't. Because at the end of the day, there exists two distinct realities. Either you are a person that believes people are capable of change, or you're not. I don't believe that either person in that scenario are in the wrong. What I do believe, though, is that casting aside those people that have consciously chosen to better themselves and own the consequences of their past and make sure they never make those same mistakes and educate people, marking them as wholly irredeemable, honestly just does more harm than good overall. And to those that don't believe that people change, I hope you never find yourself in a future with mistakes that you regret. I've learned so much through all of this. I've learned even more that you can never be complacent in thinking that you've atoned for all of your mistakes. Moving forward, I'm going to make sure that I use this platform that I've been given to be some kind of instrument of change and to help with whatever issues that I can maybe help with. Be that fundraising, outreach, just awareness in general, I don't know, but I know that I need to do it. I'd also never considered talking to a professional about my past and everything. Therapy was always like a little too weird for me to wrap my head around, but I changed that and I love it. And I'll let you guys know my progress with it. I'm not a person that feels the need to constantly defend themselves, and I can deal with people not liking me. And I don't like YouTubers that are just constantly making videos responding to things and just being negative in general. So this will probably be the only time I make a video talking about this. I'll be going back to my regular upload schedule now. So if you missed the memes, I'm sorry to inform you that there will be more. Keep your head up and treat each other well. and it gets better. Unsubscribe or don't, thanks.